Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Data Science Hangout. If you're joining for the first time, it's great to meet you. I'm Rachel. I'm the host of the Data Science Hangout. If this is your first Hangout, this is an open space for the whole data science community to connect and chat about data science leadership, questions you're facing, and really what's going on in the world of data science. I'll also say, as I mentioned last time, if you are watching this on YouTube in the future, you can also join us live, and we love to have you. But we always want to create spaces where everybody can participate and we can hear from everyone. I'm getting a little bit of background, but there's 3 ways to ask questions. So you could jump in live, you can raise your hand on Zoom, you can put questions in the Zoom chat, and just put a little star next to your question in the Zoom chat if you want me to read it out loud. But we also have a Slido link where you can ask questions anonymously too. And someone from our studio will help share that in the chat in just a moment. But I just want to reiterate, we love to hear from everyone, no matter your level of experience or area of work. And so today I'm so excited to be joined by my co-host, Jenny Listman. Jenny is a director of research at Statespace. And Jenny, I'd love to have you introduce yourself. I know you've been on here a few weeks before, Hi. But share a bit about your work.
Hi. Well, so first, thanks so much for having me. And thanks to our studio in general for providing this this forum for the community. It's great. So I'm director of research at Statespace Labs, and I think probably most people don't know of the company. Some people may know of some of our products, but without knowing the name of the company. So it was founded by neuroscientists who met at NYU. It was founded about 5 years ago. So the company combines neuroscience, gaming, and AI to build products that help people maximize their performance and connect with other people while having fun. So that's vague, but the underlying technology is based on research methods from sensory motor neuroscience and cognitive psychology. So there are multiple products that the company has. If you're a gamer, in particular, if you're an FPS gamer, you might know of our first product, which is called AimLab, which is a first-person shooter assessment and training scenario, although a lot of people use it just because they think it's fun, so they play it as a game on its own. We also have AimBlocks, which is AimLab in Roblox. We also have 2 esports and gaming coaching platforms where we can connect players with coaches and training content. And we also have a digital health group that's been working for a while in stealth mode. So I think most people have no idea, especially people who are familiar with the company through AimLab or AimBlocks, they have no idea that we have a digital health arm. So the digital health group is working on gamified cognitive and motor performance assessments. So the company, while it was founded by scientists, and the underlying methods and the underlying analytical methods and assessment methods or strategies are developed in-house by scientists. Many of the other people who work at the company come from the gaming industry or are diehard gamers. So the engineers, the designers, user experience, marketing, and analytics. There are people who either came from the gaming industry or are really serious gamers. We also have former esports pros and coaches, streamers working at the company. So that's Statespace. I don't know if, I think I saw one person nodding when I said AIM Lab. So, maybe we have some players here.
Thanks, Jenny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to maybe put us all in kind of like your frame of reference too, I'm curious, what are some of the business problems or things that you're helping to solve, or things your team's working on too?
So the company has, I would divide our data questions, problems, goals into kind of two buckets. So first of all, I should preface that by saying a lot of people assume that because AIM Lab is free, I think the default assumption is that we're selling people's data, which we're not. We just keep all of the data in-house and do the, use it to improve the product or build other products. So that's number one. But I would say we have two different buckets of data and analysis needs. So one is the kind that you might encounter at another company with a customer-facing product. So retention, customer segmentation, marketing analytics, A/B testing. So we have those needs. But there's also a lot of science going on at the company. So we have another bucket of data needs that might be more what you would expect at a digital health company, or even in an academic lab. So that even applies to the AIM Lab product or Roblox product. So even the gaming products and not just the digital health products. We're still doing things like figuring out how do we measure certain aspects of human cognitive or motor performance through their interactions with a computer. How do we extract scientifically valid signals from the data? How do we estimate the extent to which different environmental factors or practice habits affect performance? When I think about our data needs, I sort of bucket them into these two categories.
That's
so we
really
have,
helpful.
we have it. So we have a data and analytics group that works on the problems that you might normally associate with a data science or analytics group. And then we have an R&D group or a science team that works on a lot of the other problems, but the results of our work feedback, into each other.
That's great. And I see a few people are very familiar with AIM Lab, or I see Sam mentioned that. Well, while we're waiting for some of the questions to come in from the audience, something I'd love to ask you about from a follow-up previous session was around resume reviews. And I know we had brought that up about how it'd be great to be able to connect people from the community, people that could share their resume and others that could help provide feedback. And I'm curious if there is specific feedback or tips that you generally share with people.
Good question. I think, so first of all, I think a theme that I've seen on this, the data science hangout, but just in general online among the data science community is like, well, how do I transition? How do I get my first job in data science? And I think part of the problem is just the word data scientist. It means so many different things that at a certain point it loses meaning, right? If I think people use that term to describe a business analyst or someone, in another context, someone could just use the same term to describe someone who's using neural nets to solve problems. Right now, I don't do either of those things, so I think partly the data science community might need to start doing a better job at describing these different kinds of jobs, because if you're just starting out, or you're trying to, whether you're transitioning out of academia or you're an undergrad or graduating with a master's degree, and you want to go into data science, like what does that even mean? So I think it might be a good if the community could come up with some better definitions. I know there are some people who have done some really good work around that. And as far as like general advice, I would say one of the things that I've seen are people who are not, this is what we talked about previously, people who are not good at promoting themselves. And I, in a previous life, was definitely guilty of that. And so I think just that skill alone, learning how to write about your own accomplishments, as if it was someone else writing for you, is a skill to learn on its own. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was something Libby had mentioned before in the chat too, like thinking about somebody else writing that about you. It's good feedback. I will mention too that this is just an experiment, but I was thinking if we wanted to start like a resume review club through the data science hangout, I did make a Google form where you could just say, like, you could upload your resume, or you could raise your hand to say, I would love to help review someone else's. So I just put that link in the chat if people want to check it out.
Yeah, I would say this is totally my fault. I did this to myself. This came up because I don't know how long ago it was, maybe 4 weeks ago. Someone at Statespace forwarded me a resume for someone who was applying for one of our data analyst positions, and asking, is this person qualified? Should I tell them to apply? And so I looked at the resume, and immediately certain things jumped out at me, like the most important accomplishment, like within each job, that previous job that had been posted, the most important accomplishment at that job was listed last in the bullet points. For more than one job that was listed, this person was, before giving themselves credit for anything, was referring to their colleagues, which is wonderful. Like, I trained under this person who helped me, or I contributed to something. But then they had done things on their own and they weren't promoting that stuff first. And then out of curiosity, I looked at this person's LinkedIn page and saw, well, there's a whole bunch of amazing things that were listed on their LinkedIn page that hadn't even made it onto their resume. So I responded and said, they may very well be qualified to apply for this job, but before that happens, like, forget about this job. This person just needs to really redo their resume and do a better job at telling everyone how wonderful they are. And then after I saw that, I messaged the New York Slack chapter for the New York Our Ladies Slack group, asking, does anyone know of like a forum where people can get their resume reviewed? And there wasn't really a response. And then I mentioned it on a data science hangout and realized, like, oh, I just assigned that to myself, probably. So, but yeah, no, thank you, Rachel, for kicking that off, because I can't do it by myself. I think that's part of the point.
Yeah, thank you for the idea of it. And we had a few people use it already, even just as an experiment, and got great feedback on how the process worked. I'm sure we'll have more people starting to use it, so I'll keep in touch with you of how that's going. I see, Ethan, you just put a question into the chat if you want to just jump in.
Yeah. Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
I'm an AimLab fan, FPS junkie. So when I see that there's an AimLab company, I'm so excited that you'll be talking about. So you mentioned that AimLab was started by neuroscientists. I'm curious how the task, because basically for everyone here, AimLabs basically you have different tasks that you send, like basically sensory tasks that you click on. And how was the task first designed? Was it driven by the neurological science side or the gaming side? And also, could you give us a flavor of what sorts of analysis you can do on AimLab data? Basically, I'm trying to imagine, could gamers actually help healthcare research?
Yeah, so they can. So the first tasks and the underlying technology was developed based on the kinds of experiments that often go on in psych labs, except with a much more boring stimulus. Like there's a horizontal line on the screen and there's a vertical line on the screen and, click when you see this. So some of those basic types of experiments were basically overlaid with gaming scenarios. So, well, not just I see someone in the chat, not just executive function tasks, but there are, I don't know, maybe at least like 100 tasks right now in AimLab. Some of them concentrate more on, tracking something that's moving, like a smooth tracking movement. Some of them are more ballistic movements. Some of them assess working memory. But the trick with something like AimLab is that, like I said, a typical experiment in a lab, people are paid. They're there for, maybe an hour, and it's boring, but they're being paid. So if it's a game, it has to be fun, right? So the tasks in AimLab have to balance from the perspective of the scientists being able to collect scientifically useful data, while being fun enough that people want to play it, and also being similar enough to the gaming scenarios that they're actually trying to train for. So it's a total balance. It's a continuous balance when, for any of the tasks that are designed.
Yeah, so you share an article with the Washington Post about people actually asked you guys can you make the game more laggy, just to make it more similar to the actual game, the tournament they have to compete in. I think the article mentioned PUBG gamers that they asked you guys, can you lower the FPS so that it simulate the actual tournament that they're in?
Yeah, I mean, people can, change their settings in the game to, simulate whatever they're using in their favorite game. But we have a couple of times we have asked AimLab users to participate in research projects. So we have had, research projects that were done directly with, small numbers of AimLab users, but for the most part, people are just playing the game however they want to play the game with whatever equipment they want to use, typically in their home. It could be 2 a.m, it could be 1 p.m. Somebody might play it for 10 minutes, somebody might play it every day. And, that's just, so those are not experiments exactly, right? It's just whatever data is coming in. We also, like I said, we now have this digital health group. So we are using tasks. We're sort of taking the tasks from AimLab and in some cases porting them to tablet, in some cases leaving them as a, PC-based tasks. We were working with several different universities on projects having to do with assessing concussion, assessing cognitive changes under hypoxia, so low levels of oxygen deprivation that you might experience at high altitude. We have another research project with pediatric cerebral palsy patients. So the same technology that's and gamified tasks that were built for AIMLab can be used for these research purposes and to, assess cognitive and motor performance outside of gaming.
Yeah, I guess like on the side of gamifications of it, as it's not just making it like a game, you also have the review part. So after every session on AIMLab, if it will actually tell you what you're good at and you're tracking your performance over time. So it's telling you something that you may have a lower left side screen weaknesses, or maybe you're slower on that area, so which is quite interesting. The other side is that you have a leaderboard, so people can publish their results.
Right. So people use it as a, to warm up before they play for their favorite game, or as a trainer to improve in their favorite game. But like I mentioned before, there are plenty of people who just, enjoy playing in AIMLab as it is and compete for positions on the leaderboard. Yeah.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, it's interesting to think about all the data behind the games. And I mean, I know Wordle is one that's been top of mind for a lot of people lately, but thinking like what data could be behind that too. I see there was an anonymous question that came in that was, what are some things or skills specific to research that aren't traditionally part of a data science exclusive role?
You mean, what are some of the skills that are specific to I assume this person is asking, what are some of the skills that are specific to like the R&D team versus the data science team?
I think so, yes.
Okay. So for one, some of the roles on the R&D team really require domain expertise. So some of the people on the R&D team have PhDs in neuroscience, cognitive psychology, bioengineering, but specifically people who have worked on brain-computer interface projects. So people who have experience analyzing very specific types of data and who have a background in cognitive neuroscience, cognitive psychology, which isn't necessary for some of the other data science or analytics roles at the company.
Speaking of roles at the company, I know that you are hiring for a bunch of different roles.
Right.
And curious to hear what you're looking for in each of those roles and if they're on your team or.
Yeah, so I am not a hiring manager for any of the current roles. We don't have a role currently. Right now, I'm on the R&D team. So the data and analytics team has, I believe, 2 openings right now. Yes, Aaliyah, this is one of my coworkers, is on the call. So there's data scientist roles on the analytics team. And there's also a marketing analytics position, which I believe is separate from the data scientist roles. There's also in digital health, there's there's a role in the digital health team that would be more along the lines of a biostatistician. So those are the current open, data related roles, but I should mention that there's plenty of open roles. There's plenty of openings in engineering, marketing, product. So if you have, friends who might be interested, definitely direct them to I think all of the jobs are listed on Lever, but I'm sure if you just Google it, people would find all of the open positions.
Awesome. And Aaliyah, feel free to share them in the chat too, if you want to share the links to the job postings. But just a reminder to everyone, feel free to just raise your hand on Zoom if you want to just jump in live as well. But one question, Jenny, I'd love to ask you, and we actually used to ask this at the beginning of all the data science hangouts, but it's, what are you most excited about right now in data science for the next year, or projects at work that are most exciting to you?
So for me, at the current projects that we're working on, I think, Statespace is a young company. So we're at the point now where we are better able to take advantage of all the data that we're collecting. So, we have this enormous volume of performance data, of human performance data. We've been able to write a couple of journal articles based on that. So if you're coming from academia, the size of our data sets is really exciting. So that, sort of like a playground if you're coming out of academia, to have access to such a large amount of data. So on a regular basis, I find that exciting. But we're at a point now where we are going to be able to, combine data from the different products that we have so that they can feed off of each other to really maximize the experience of our users, and get better at personalizing the user's experience to help them improve. So I think that, it's been like a long time coming. And, before you can do something like that, you actually have to just spend a lot of time immersing yourself in the data to even figure out what's there. So yeah, so that's on the horizon.
Thank you. I know just from LinkedIn, and I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, but that you had previously had your own consulting company as well. And I know there's a lot of people in the data science space who maybe even during COVID just recently started consulting businesses. And I'd love to hear a bit about your experience in that, and if you have some tips that you might share with people listening.
Yeah, so I my initial academic training was in anthropological genomics. I worked in a psychiatric genetics lab for a number of years. And then when I left academia, the role that I had was in a center for STEM education at NYU's engineering school. And I did some, project outcome measures. I instituted a lot of quantification of the programs that they were offering to, they offered programs to like thousands of local kids in middle school and high school, but weren't necessarily keeping track of the effects that the programs had. So I was able to institute that, write some papers on that. I wrote a lot of grants in that role, and a specific problem came up that I thought I can solve. I can probably solve this with R. And it had been a couple of years since I had to use R. I think I started using R in grad school, probably like 2004. So there was no R Studio. It was all command line. But I thought there's this problem and I'm pretty sure I can, find a package and solve it in R. And when I started doing that, I was like, I miss this. I miss this part. Like I loved my job. I loved the people I worked with. But I realized like I need to do this again. So I left that job and set aside a chunk of time to turn myself into a data science consultant. And to do that, I know this is advice given, maybe controversial advice given to people like, oh, assign yourself projects and make a blog. And so, which I did. And I do understand that in order to be able to do that, you have to have enough free time to be able to accomplish that, which I did. And, basically assign myself problems that would force me to have to learn new packages, new tools, new analytical methods. And after doing that, I landed a gig as a consultant for an education nonprofit that had a gigantic longitudinal data set. And I worked for them for about maybe like a year and a half before starting at Statespace. And even for Statespace, at first I was a consultant writing a really large grant, like a monster grant. Didn't get funded, but that's okay because it laid groundwork for a lot of other stuff. And then I was hired full-time at Statespace. But yeah, so that I was not, a full-time employee for this company, for the nonprofit, the education nonprofit, but it took up enough of my time that it was, for me, basically a full-time job.
What was that transition like of being a consultant for a company and then coming on full-time?
So Statespace is unusual. It's the culture is unusual. The flexibility of the work hours is unusual. So the transition for me might not be what other people would experience. The company has been remote from the beginning. There was no real office when the company was really small. And then people started getting hired who were in different time zones. There were thoughts of getting an office, but then the pandemic hit. So, and in the meantime, the company raised more money and expanded. There are people who work for Statespace, all over the world. We manage, in a single meeting, there could be people on like 7 different time zones, right? So, and the culture at Statespace is people just have to get their work done. So nobody's really a 9-to-5 employee at Statespace. And I understand that also some people have negative opinions about a company that's run that way, where the work hours are like, just get your work done. It's whatever the hours are that you need to do it. And, there's no specific vacation time, just take vacation when you need it. And I understand that there are circumstances in which a company might take advantage of that, or where people might work for a company that has that kind of policy where they would feel really pressured to just never take vacation. And that's just not how it works at Statespace. So I think there's one job that I had when I left academia. I think I was there for maybe a year. Not the job at NYU. It was a different job where it was really 9 to 5. And I remember the first time I had a dentist appointment. I had just a dental cleaning, and I had to take a half of a sick day to get my teeth cleaned. And I was just like, I don't think I can deal with this. And I totally understand this is just a personal preference. There are plenty of people who want a job where they know at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. I'm done. Nobody can bother me. And when it's the weekend, it's my weekend and no one can bother me. For me and my family, the level of flexibility that I have at Statespace is actually really important and, a huge benefit for me. So as far as like the hours and, there wasn't, for me, it didn't feel like such a big transition going from consulting to working full-time at Statespace. Other than, I just, I now have like a lot more colleagues and, definitely work more hours.
Yeah. It sounds like there is an awesome culture at Statespace, just from even previous conversations that we had as well. And I see, Sam, you actually just asked a question about this as well. Do you want to jump in? Or I can read it and you can add context, but it's, how do you ensure employees at Statespace have a work-life balance to avoid burnout?
That's a good question. It is definitely a risk. So managers have to be really careful and be on top of that to make sure that doesn't happen. I think it depends on the role that somebody has at the company and the level of responsibility that they have. For some of the people in, for example, engineering, or we have a really, really large community team, meaning the people who are on Discord or Twitter communicating, in constant communication with users, responding in real time when people have a question or have a problem. And so for those people, certainly there's work to do on the weekends, or if something crashes, there have to be engineers who are willing to fix something on the weekends. But managers just have to be really careful about who has to take responsibility for that kind of thing, like in an emergency.
Yeah. Thank you. And thanks, Sam, for asking that question as well, because I think that's something that a lot of us, I know there's a lot of talk around burnout, but how do people know when they're actually experiencing burnout before it's too late?
Yeah. And again, I think that is an issue that people have with companies that have this sort of, nebulous working hours and lack of specific vacation time. All I can say is I think it's working pretty well at Statespace. Personally, I haven't had a problem with it, up to now. I appreciate being able to, in the middle of the week, if I have to take 2 hours during business hours to make phone calls to manage my 87-year-old mother's healthcare, I can do that. I can, if it's, a family member's birthday, I can stop working at 3 and make a cake from scratch and do whatever I want to do to help them celebrate their birthday. And then I don't feel, for me personally, then I get work done on the weekend because it's really quiet and I don't have any meetings. I don't have any work-related meetings. And it doesn't bother me that I'm doing that, because I also know that, I have the freedom in the middle of the week to exercise or do these other things that I need to do. Definitely. But it's definitely a personal preference. There are people who really need specific work hours for their lifestyle.
I'm curious from the group here as well, like if you have other tips too for avoiding burnout, or if there's things people want to share in the chat. I see Zach, you put a a question in the chat if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I was just, of course, like I'm British. UK law is a lot different to US law, especially around holiday and to take time off. I was wondering, how do you make sure? Again, it's the burnout question, and is there a minimum days off? If even because you said there's not like unlimited, you can take as much days off. How do you ensure, other than just a general culture thing, that actually people do take enough days off? Because otherwise there will be burnout no matter how much they love their work.
So HR does keep tabs on that, and they will make people take time off. Like, I mean, they can see who's not taking time off. So yeah, occasionally people are just told, like, go disappear for a while. Like, you need to do that. Yeah.
I know we had to do that at our studio because we do have unlimited time off, but sometimes when you have unlimited, you don't actually take it off. So we have like quarterly check-ins now where you have to say, like, are you on track to take this minimum amount?
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, I guess it's also with the pandemic, you're not going on holiday, or people are starting now. I know for me, I've not taken enough days off, and right, for mine, they reset end of March, so they just reset. I always have to, I've only been working a couple of years, but I always get told in March I have to take like 4, 5, 6 days off to make sure I hit minimum requirements.
Yeah, people don't even know what day of the week it is anymore. So that definitely has made it more difficult. Yeah.
I like Mark's tips in the chat too. He said a good manager who recognizes when the team needs a break is key.
Yeah. Or a manager who takes time off themselves to set an example.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've also been trying, like, this is new, but on the weekend, like when 5 p.m. Friday hits, to delete Slack off my phone, log out of my email, delete LinkedIn. That's a big one for me.
Really?
It's deleting LinkedIn. And then Monday, I'll let myself put it back on my phone. So we'll see how that works.
Yeah, I mean, I think for some people, like any other phone app, these work-related phone apps, people are just sort of addicted to clicking on them. So, yeah.
Definitely. I see there was another anonymous question earlier that was, any insight on how trends like 5G and AR, VR would shape the technology investment with AIM Labs?
So, I mean, VR, I think any company that's working on anything related to video games, has to be paying attention to VR. We have released a couple of AIM Lab tasks on VR. So, any company that is working on anything that's presented in the form of a video game, whether it's for entertainment or for healthcare, has to be looking at multiple platforms: PC, console, mobile, tablet, VR. Yeah.
How have you seen the customer experience, or from the data, based on if people are using VR or not?
Well, so like I said, we've only released a couple of tasks in VR mode.
I see.
Sort of as a test to just to test out that technology. They seem to be pretty well received. I mean, there's, I think the headset technology still has a ways to go in terms of not everyone is physically comfortable with headsets. There are people who get nauseous from them, things like that. And there's also, it's an additional cost, right? Like if you're trying to reach a large number of people, mobile phones are probably the easiest way to reach the largest number of people without assuming that everybody's going to go out and buy another piece of equipment. So right now, headsets are pretty expensive, and it's not like most people have it in their home.
When you were talking about some of the work that Statespace is doing in public health, do you have partnerships with like different hospitals or organizations, or what does that look like?
So right now we have several research projects that are ongoing. One with Mount Sinai Hospital in New York. That's the project that we're doing where pediatric patients with cerebral palsy are using some AIM-Lab tasks that have been adapted for, some are on tablet, some are on PC, but adapted for use in that context. And for that, it's not only that the mechanics of the tasks had to be changed, but all of the imagery and sounds and text had to be changed because there can't be any gun imagery or anything about shooting. Like this is a tool that's being used in a hospital and with kids. So the design team had to totally overhaul the tasks and remove anything having to do with a gun or words having to do with kill or shooting. One of the tasks, it's a tracking task, and this is just like one of my favorite things that that came out of our work over the past year. It's a tracking task. So, someone has to follow something that's moving on the screen and track it. And so instead of targets, like round shaped targets, the targets are cats. And I don't know if for people who are familiar with video games, a target's health or an opponent's health is sometimes shown on the screen as like a bar that's decreasing in size, or like something that's colored that's fading. So the cat's health is like a rainbow that's basically coming out of the cat's butt, and it just like shortens as the cat's life shortens. So so we had to adapt the tasks for use for pediatric patients, and definitely our design team had a lot of fun with that one. And then we have partnerships at Indiana University, where we have a large study going on with a lot of the athletes at Indiana University, assessing concussion using adapted AIM-Lab tasks. And that's also at Indiana University, is where we're doing a study on hypoxia. Yeah. And
Nice.
we've also partnered with companies that wanted to use AIM-Lab tasks to assess their products, or to test out their products. So we've done some efficacy testing, or we've used AIM-Lab task metrics as outcome metrics for efficacy testing of nutritional supplements in partnership with a CRO. And we've built tasks for Kernel, which is a neuroscience-based company. So yeah, we're
really
using AIM-Lab
interesting.
tasks
Yeah.
for other kinds of research.
Cool, thank you. I see, Raphael, you just put a question into the chat. Would you want to ask that one live?
Yeah, I see this. Yeah, I see this question about you've read an article saying that cognitive abilities begin to decline at 26, and we rely on previous experience more at that age. So is this true? And does it mean I have to try harder to beat my 12-year-old brother? So that's a good question. We did collect some data on age and performance in AIM-Lab And our data did indicate that performance seems to peak before 26, like 24, 25 years old. But that I would qualify that by saying that, you know, the data that we're collecting, our data set is messy. This is not under controlled conditions, right? Our users are playing AimLab at home. All of their equipment is different. We have no idea what time of day they're playing, right? We don't collect information on their gender. So it's not like this was done in a lab, but our data showed that there was a decline after like mid-20s, and there have been published studies on that were conducted with data conducted under controlled conditions that have the similar results, like at around that age. Yeah. But yeah, you know, things like game sense and experience, you know, cognitive control in terms of restraining yourself so you don't shoot a teammate instead of an enemy, things like that. You know, age might give you an advantage.
Thanks, Jenny. I see Raphael saying, "Oh no," in the chat. I was thinking the same. Jordan, I see you have your hand raised. If you want to jump in.
Yeah, sure. So specifically on that last question. So I work at a company that also does cognitive testing, more focused with healthcare and clinical trials. So our goal isn't always to make them kind of fun. But funny enough, we partner with seems like we partner with some of the same people. But specifically on the like declining like cognitive abilities, kind of post like 20s, mid-20s, we yeah, I mean, generally depending on the task, you do see some like declines from that. It's the pinnacle, but just so that in case anyone's worried, they're probably not going to be noticeable. You might be psyching yourself out a bit too much with it. That we have cognitive test performance data from like 8 years to like 90. And for a lot of these tasks, there's not a big difference. Things that involve reaction time, you will see a decline. But things that rely on sort of accuracy or some sorts of, or depending on the memory paradigm, you won't have like a significant decrease unless there is some neurodegenerative disorder or some sort of injury. But if you're a generally healthy person, you can probably still beat your 12-year-old brother.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that's important is sleep. So yeah, you need to, you know, I think there are people who think that if they practice, you know, just like cramming for a test, well, if I practice for hours and hours, I'll get better. But if you do that until it's like 3 a.m, then you're actually, you know, not, you won't retain what you're learning, right? If you're practicing and training, you're not going to really retain it. And also, you know, lack of sleep in general harms cognitive performance, and gaming is a cognitive task. So yeah, you should get, everyone should get some sleep.
Sleep deprivation is actually how some cognitive tests validate themselves, because everyone knows that not enough sleep is bad for you. So sometimes for some cognitive tests, like you can replicate or you can demonstrate that it is sort of measuring aptitude, because you can see that in the group that had sleep deprivation, they didn't perform well. It's more ethical than giving people brain injuries. So but you do, don't definitely get sleep. Sleep is very good.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to the oxygen deprivation study that we're doing, where, you know, oxygen deprivation sounds worse than it is. This is like simulating high altitude levels of low oxygen. So it's, you know, something easily reversible, like, you know, quickly reversible, and it's not, you know, harming anyone, but it should result in some cognitive changes. Yeah.
Thank you. I see there are a few anonymous questions that came into, but Sam, I saw you just put into the chat. What is Statespace's view on the recent controversy around Roblox? Is that how I pronounce it? For child exploitation?
Oh, I would not. I would leave that up to our lawyers or our CEO to answer. First of all, I'm not really sure what that refers to exactly, but yeah, that is
a video. Yeah,
definitely not a question.
He
for
put
me to answer.
there was a link in the chat, but we can I can share that later too. The anonymous question was, some companies showcase their products and services on virtual showrooms, almost like a first-person video game experience. Do you see value in that?
I would need slightly more of an explanation to answer that question. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, some of those questions are anonymous too. So if you feel free to just like add context on Slido too, if you want, or to the person that asked it.
Yeah.
But I'll go to the other anonymous question that was there too. And this was, are these the tasks that you're talking about? Are these proprietary tests or tasks that are developed for devices, or are they traditional cognitive tests that are redeveloped?
Oh, so some of our analytics are proprietary, and some of the tasks that we've developed are definitely unique and proprietary. But, you know, and then some of them are, like I said, based on experiments that are done in psych labs, you know, around the world, but they're made more fun in AIM Lab. Yeah. So the imagery and the sounds make them more fun. But I think the tasks that are in AIM Lab that, you know, you could say are taken directly from academic research, that proportion is probably pretty small. And most of the tasks are more simulating scenarios that people would encounter in a game, but with the measurements underlying it are proprietary.
Thank you. Can I ask you if there are any resources or podcasts or books that you've liked recently that you'd recommend to us?
Oh my gosh. I related to data science?
It doesn't have to be. It could be more general.
I don't know. I think actually I have a problem with that, in that, like, I feel like I bookmark so many things. You know, I think whether it's Twitter or LinkedIn, you come across things that look like, oh, this will be really useful to read, or you know, useful video to watch, and there's almost like too many of them. So I know I personally have a problem with that. Yeah. But so I can't give something specific right now.
That's okay.
I mean, I definitely rely heavily on our community, whether it's blog posts or you know, all of the material that's free that other people who use R create. It's, you know, one of the reasons that I stick with R.
That's awesome. I see that Ian Moore is on from Absalon, and Ian, I wanted to give you a moment to share about the Shiny conference if you wanted to jump in.
Hey, Rachel. Sorry, I didn't expect this at all.
Oh, sorry. I just really just put you on the spot, but I saw you were still there.
It's all right.
So
if anybody hasn't heard about the Shiny conference yet, it's happening at the end of the month, and we have an incredible lineup. We're super excited about it. This is going to be the first Absalon Shiny conference, so there's, you know, some things we're working out, but the general time zone, I believe, is from 5 a.m. to I think 1 p.m. Eastern time. But most of the main content is going to be happening later in the day.
Awesome. Thanks, Ian. Yeah, I just put the link in the chat too.
Yeah, thanks again so much.
It should be great. Well, thank you so much, Jenny, for joining us today and for sharing all your insights and about Statespace. It's great to chat with you. And I appreciate you mentioning the need to have this platform to help each other review resumes too. So hopefully we can.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens with that. So thank you.
I can see a few people already filled out the form just from the call.
Oh, really?
Today, so
okay.
That's awesome.
Okay, great. And I know Aaliyah posted links to, I don't know if that was a link to like all of our job listings or specifically the analytics job listings, but I can also, I can share a link.
Perfect.
To
the
other job listings.
And I can put that with the recording as well, and as well as in the LinkedIn data science community group.
Sure.
I'll put those job postings there too. But thank you all so much.